how are you? Welcome on in.
Podcast by George.
Another podcast by George.
Podcast by George. Border to border, coast to coast. Podcast by George.
Hello, hi, how are you? Welcome on in to another podcast by George. Hey, welcome to episode 500 of Podcast by George. This is a landmark for me with the show, but it's also going to play into what we're talking about today. Because, you got to play with me here to understand this, but when I started this show almost 5 years ago, it was still somewhat early on in the live stream podcasting world. And I thought, if more indie left people did what I'm doing, if they created this patchwork quilt of indie left-wing media that is not being seen, that is not being heard, the anti-war voices, the people that want to fix the climate catastrophe before it claims us all, the people that want to do something about Medicare for all, well, we can make a difference. Well, I'm beginning to think now, after almost 5 years of doing this, we've made a difference in that we're raising awareness, but have any of those things really changed? Well, not so much, but we got a guy coming on the show today that's taking a different tack, that's doing something different, and I'm really excited about this, and it really fits into the 500th episode of Podcast by George. You may have seen the promo here. It has to do with Jose Vega. This is an exclusive. Let me bring his Podcast by George live line graphic up and read a little bit of this. Jose Vega is a New York-based activist. He's a truth teller. Jose is trying to save us all, folks. He's become a legend in the left-wing Twitter sphere and on independent left-wing media that is being, and also right-wing. We'll talk about that. He's being demonized and censored, just like we all are, despite being correct about climate, war, and healthcare, like the left-wingers have been my entire life. Left-wing media, it's not only censored, they're not even given a seat at the table. You won't see them on the talking head cable shows. You won't see them on the weekend TV magazines. All you see is the mainstream media and their politicians and their spokespeople. My God, think Jim Clapper, James Brennan, John Bolton, people like that all over mainstream media. And we're not getting a look behind the curtain. Jose, he's got questions, hard questions, folks, that they don't want to answer, and they won't answer. We're going to see a little bit of that, even when they're confronted with citizens exercising their First Amendment rights. So let's take that graphic off screen here. Let's click another button and one over here and say good morning to our new friend, our new pal, Jose Vega. Hi, Jose. Yeah, it's great. Now I'm not hearing you, and we just did a pre-show.
My bad, I was muted. Sorry. I was saying good morning. How you doing?
I'm doing great, pal.
All right, gave you a heart attack there. I apologize.
Oh, that's all right. And like I said, Jose is all the rage. So he's his time is limited. We got a half an hour with him today. I want to get to this right away. I don't want to screw around like a lot of podcasters do, even though it's my 500th episode. I want to play this most recent video clip, and I'm gonna play it all the way through, and then maybe we'll go back through it slowly and jump in here and talk about it. But for people that haven't seen this, watch this. This is the sea change that I'm seeing, what he's doing. I'm telling people, I feel like I'm watching the Beatles to a certain respect. We were all watching Andy Williams and Pat Boone and all that stuff, and then the Beatles came on and changed everything. Well, this is a different approach, folks. Watch this.
Oh, is this the lecture hall with Seymour Hersh? I'm looking for the one with Seymour Hersh because it's a policy and press hall event. So shouldn't we be talking about the Nord Stream since that's the biggest story of the century? And you guys, you have the executive editor of the New York Times there who came out with a phony story to try and block Seymour Hersh. It's just kind of funny how that happened, did you even acknowledge Seymour Hersh? All of you are executive editors of papers that broke Pentagon, My Lai, Watergate. Is this the same papers or not? Is there anything you've gotten right in the last 20 years, or am I mistaken about that? It's just kind of funny because Iraq, wrong. Syria, wrong. Russiagate, really wrong. Okay, the list goes on and on. So the last thing you could do to try and actually fix your reputation is acknowledge that through leaks, we had to find out that Zelensky was going to bomb Moscow on the anniversary. I mean, if you're so impartial, shouldn't you at least say, right, that Zelensky was going to bring us on the verge of World War III? That seems pretty fair. While Julian Assange rots in prison, all of you got, fat checks because he's in jail for doing your job. And you know what? Tucker Carlson ain't no Seymour Hersh, but he did something you guys are scared to do. Speak the truth and actually be critical of the war, which is why he was actually fired from Fox, because you are all cowards. Every single one of you. None of you have actually had any relevancy. And you know what? The mainstream press is now dying. Nobody's ever going to listen to you again. You have no credibility with the public. The only people who care about what you have to say are elite assholes who have nothing productive to say anymore. And it's dying off. So will you at least say something, either about Nord Stream or Ukraine or the fact that Zelensky brought us to the verge of World War III, and the only reason we knew about that was through leaks? Go ahead. It's a free speech event, right? You guys are the press. Let's say something here. Mr. Khan, come on. You're the executive editor of the New York Times, I'm just trying to get into some good trouble here, man. Woo, listen, Karen, get out of my face for a second. I got to talk to these gentlemen. Okay. Well, I just want to hear what they have to say. Go ahead, I'm done.
Wait your turn.
You're not going to tell them to you. Come.
Wait your turn.
You could project if we can't.
I would just say, I think it's important to hear everybody's point of view.
Yeah.
So, and
All right.
I do think that we need to give our moderator a chance to ask other questions.
We're on the verge of World War III. Say something about this bombing. We blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. Listen, don't stand there while there are people rotting in prison. Nobody said anything about Uhuru, right? The socialists who are in jail for being critical of this war. God damn it.
Let's go.
At least say something about the people in jail for being critical of this war. They don't deserve to be in prison right now.
Wow. I'm telling you, that's Jose exercising his First Amendment rights, his freedom of speech right in a room full of journalists. And look what happened there. But to back up just a second here, lay the groundwork for us here, Jose. What was this event and why did you go to it?
It was a 2-day conference. That was day one of the conference, hosted at Columbia Journalism School. And it was actually all the media bigwigs were there. It wasn't just the executive editors of all these papers were there, but you also had MSNBC was there, like some of their hosts, and Masha Gessen, who's also another big name, was there. The specific panel that I interrupted was called the Press and Policy. So what responsibility does the press have when it comes to shaping American public policy? And on the stage was the executive director for the New York Times, LA Times, Washington Post, Reuters, and Jonathan Capehart of MSNBC.
Wow, what a lineup. Well, I want to, again, I hope we can get this all in today, but I want to break this down a little bit. Now, I want to see if we can
is this the lecture hall with Seymour Hersh?
Okay,
right.
Wait, we can stop right there.
Yeah.
So you have to picture yourself sitting in the audience. The people are droning on about we're the authorities of what information is, and we know what disinformation is, and we need to track where misinformation comes from. That's what the lady was talking about, and I was not going to sit through a whole hour of that BS. So I just because it's done at Columbia, right, at a school. So that's why when I stood up, I wanted to give the impression that I'm some goofball who walked into the wrong class. Oh, is this the lecture hall with Seymour Hersh? And even though it's only a 2 or 3 second pause,
yes,
to me it felt like an eternity because I looked over at the speaker who was talking, like the mouth open, bug-eyed, and so it's like, the ghost of Seymour Hersh is here to haunt us because Seymour Hersh worked with the New York Times, right?
Right. It was a great approach. It's a rhetorical question, obviously. I mean, and a couple of these are that he gets into, but it's an entry. Some of these people in the crowd, I can see they're taking you seriously. They think this is legit. This is a really cool way to get into this, because if you just stood up and started waving a sign and screaming and yelling and that type of thing, the rest of what we're about to see would not get seen or heard. But this is a wonderful approach that you're taking. So watch this, folks.
I'm looking for the one with Seymour Hersh because it's a policy and press hall event. So shouldn't we be talking about the Nord Stream since that's the biggest story of the century? And you guys, you have.
Now, this is interesting. I'll stop it right here, because up to this point, again, they're all thinking you're legit, even when you initially posed that question. And then somebody in the crowd kind of, well, who is this guy? And then they're starting to figure it out at this juncture.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And that's, I will say this, like, when you do these kinds of things, because this isn't my first rodeo. I think you know that, right? I've done these countless times. You do have the power in the room. You do command, even if it's just for a second. The moment you stand up and you break the social contract of, having to be quiet and listening to the speaker, you have all the control in the room, even if it's just for that split second before people start booing you. Whatever you say, whatever comes out of your mouth, it's like you're flying, and you can say anything you want and everybody will hear it. And then the boos will start. But it's that split second of real freedom of, especially if you're standing up against a tyrannical force like what was there and you're speaking truth to power, then yes, you are really free in that moment.
And again, he's breaking decorum here, but my point on this that I bring up on my show all the time, Jose, is that decorum, the status quo way of doing things, which goes all the way back to when I was in journalism school back in the 1970s, man, that has gotten us to where we are today. We are on the brink of nevermore by exercising proper decorum, waiting your turn, putting your questions on a note card, which then don't get read by the moderators. Exactly. And you've got the power brokers. You've got the media, which maybe is more responsible for where we're at than anything else, as a captive audience. And so ask them, get these questions out there, get them. Just get their reactions, their respond, their cues, their tells, so to speak, when they're on stage. All right, let me continue with this.
The executive editor of the New York Times there, who came out with a phony story to try and block Seymour Hersh.
Okay, a lot of people, my folks aren't aware of this either. I've talked about it on my show, but Seymour Hersh came out with that outstanding reporting. Seymour Hersh, and I've got some graphics. We're not going to get to him probably, but he is the creme de la creme of journalists, folks. He's the guy that broke My Lai. He's the guy that reported on Watergate. He's the guy that revealed Abu Ghraib. I mean, he's that guy. Seymour Hersh came out with this reporting on Nord Stream, and none of the mainstream media would cover it. In fact, the New York Times, which is where he worked when he was releasing these great stories, wouldn't even acknowledge it. And Jose's going to get to it. And instead, they came up with this half-ass, ridiculous story about how Nord Stream 2 was blown up by a few guys on a fishing boat in the Baltic Sea or some shit. I mean, my God, it was an insult to an injury to propose this crazy-ass story. That's what he's talking about here.
It's just kind of funny how that happened, I mean, did you even acknowledge Seymour Hersh? All of you are executive editors of papers that broke Pentagon, My Lai, Watergate. Is this the same papers or not? I mean, is there anything you've gotten right in the last 20 years or?
I got to ask you, Jose, do you think some people in the crowd here, I mean, these are journalists and rank and file type people, but do you think some of them might be agreeing with you at this juncture?
I like to think so, but when I'm in there and when I'm like going at it, it's like game time. It's like LeBron, at like the championships, right? I'm not paying attention to the audience unless somebody's like gonna come at me and swing at me or something. But I'm not really paying attention at the audience. I'm looking right at the people I'm trying to ridicule. Afterwards, I think I did hear that some people were like, "Yeah, I'm on your side, but can't say it publicly because my job is on the line," that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah. All right, good.
Am I mistaken about that? I mean, it's just kind of funny because Iraq, wrong. Syria, wrong. Russiagate, really wrong. Okay, I mean, the list goes on and on. So the last thing you could do to try and actually fix your reputation is acknowledge that through leaks, we had to find out that Zelensky was going to bomb Moscow on the anniversary. I mean, if you're so impartial.
Now, again, I got to tell you, I was barely aware. I saw a headline on this. There was no coverage of what you're talking about here. Let me bring this up on screen. This is out of the Express in the UK. The CIA stepped in to stop Ukraine missile attack on Moscow over World War III fears. Yeah, and I'm not going to read all through this article, but basically, the CIA, and they're everywhere, folks. That's another good part of this story. They tapped the Ukraine military officials' phones, and they found out about this in advance, and they repelled. I mean, whoa, wait a minute. Hey, you guys can't do this shit. I mean, you can't even talk about this. You can't plan this, because if you do, you're putting us again on the brink of nevermore, for God's sake.
Yeah,
And
right.
Zelensky was good. And a lot of people, they love this Zelensky guy. My God, he's a former comedian. He's a flip-flopper. He's shown to be corrupt. I mean, he is not my kind of guy. He developed a plan for this, or they were discussing it anyway. Nobody in this country hardly knows about it, Jose, because of the people in the room that you're talking to.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And so I actually had read about that morning, and I was completely freaked out that that the free press isn't doing their job. That we have to find this out through leaks, right?
Yeah.
And then they wouldn't even denounce it. So, yeah.
Shouldn't you at least say, right, that Zelensky was going to bring us on the verge of World War III? That seems pretty fair. While Julian Assange rots in prison, all of you got, fat checks because he's in jail for doing your job. And you know what? Tucker Carlson ain't no Seymour Hersh, but he did something you guys are scared to do. Speak the truth and actually be critical of the war.
And I love that. And and I know you're all about Julian Assange, and so am I. I've had a lot of shows on Julian Assange, but maybe you can comment on this, Jose. I speak in terms of Rosetta Stones in American history, in my lifetime anyway. Let's put it, which is kind of American history, but it goes back to the Kennedy assassination. The imprisonment of Julian Assange, these wars which have been proven to have been fought under false pretenses, and most notably in my entire lifetime, the Iraq War. I mean, my God, 1 million dead civilians, innocents in the ground because of a war fought for a false pretense that was known. I mean, there is factual reporting on that. So you're running through this lineage, these types of things that the mainstream media in the room refuses to report on or even acknowledge.
Yeah, exactly. It's this is why it's also a tragedy that Tucker Carlson was fired, because he was the only guy on mainstream press, as far as I'm concerned, who would bring on people like Glenn Greenwald to advocate for Julian Assange, or he would bring people on to talk about the Uhuru Group, which we'll get into a little later, to talk about the Ukrainian war. Now, I don't think there's anybody at all in the mainstream press who's going to advocate for Julian Assange.
Great. I'm running through some of these questions. Yeah, Karen. Yeah, now people will, and that is dispiriting, because somebody will stand up in that crowd and do something. What do? They try to prevent your exercise of freedom of speech,
Right.
folks. I mean, you want to talk about founding fathers and all this type of thing in the Constitution. Jose's what they were talking about. That's what separates the United States from the rest of the third world shithole countries, or whatever Biden called them. I mean, that is one big difference that is supposed to separate us, not Biden, Trump, that said that. Okay, let me go back to the videotape here. I get all wound up. I'm telling you, this stuff this is just great. Okay, let me see if I can get this to come back on screen here. Where's the right button? How about here? Yeah, so that's but that's without Jose. Okay, here we go. Let's play it. Here we go.
Which is why he was actually fired from Fox, because you are all cowards, every single one of you. None of you have actually had any relevancy. And you know what? The mainstream press is now dying. Nobody's ever going to listen to you again.
Man, this is a point well taken. A lot of people are unaware of this. This is the sea change I was talking about, Jose. It's dying.
Yeah, it is. It is dying, and it's a good thing that it's dying, and it's allowing for platforms like yours, independent journalists, independent media, people with their own podcasts now to actually come to the limelight. And I think you're gonna, there's a phenomenon happening where people are what they say politically homeless now. Like I don't think I belong in either party, they say, right? And nobody really accurately represents me. And they're gonna stumble upon podcasts like yours or RBN, Savvy Sabs, Hardlens Media. They're gonna stumble upon these people and they're gonna say, you know what, you're right. I don't need to belong at a camp. I can be independent too. I can believe what I believe and not be dictated what to believe by some, authoritative press that demands to be taken seriously.
And time gets away from us here, but these are the things that he is talking about, folks. This is from the United States Courts website, which I don't frequent very often, but it's a good description of the First Amendment. And it's applying landmark Supreme Court cases to contemporary scenarios related to the 5 pillars of the First Amendment and your rights to freedom of religion, speech, press, assembly, and petition. Quote, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government in redress of grievances. That's the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. So he's completely within his rights to do exactly what he's doing. And my God, what happens in this scenario is god awful. I mean, it is just it just doesn't pass the test here. Let me bring this up. We're going to spend our whole time talking about this, but this is so good.
The only people who care about what you have to say are elite assholes who have nothing productive to say anymore, and it's dying off. So will you at least say something, either about Nord Stream or Ukraine or the fact that Zelensky brought us to the verge of World War III, and the only reason we knew about that was through leaks? Go ahead. It's a free speech event, right? You guys are the press. Let's say something here.
Okay, so my question here, Jose, are they not responding to you because they don't like you having broken with decorum, or are they not answering you because they don't have any answers, or they do have answers that they don't want heard?
They have answers they don't want heard because Joe Kahn, any of those guys could have said, Seymour Hersh is a disinformation plant, sadly has been taken over by, they could have said that, right? Nothing. They've said absolutely zilch on it, right? It's not that they're denouncing him, which would be one thing. No. They're ignoring him. And so I'm here to blow it up in their face. And that's why they're not answering me, because you know why? Because if they even said the name Seymour Hersh out of their mouths, they probably lose their jobs.
Yeah. Again, there are people that are completely aware of the Black Uhuru situation. You brought this up too. Very topical, very timely, shocking, jaw-dropping. My God, reminds me, I just saw an interview with the guy that founded Extinction Rebellion out in the UK. Hell, he was put in prison for 4 months or something for a Zoom call. Explain what happened to these Black socialists.
Yeah, so really what's happening is that they're put in jail for being critical of the war. Now, officially, through the State Department, they're saying that they worked with like a Russian nationalist, but all it was they had some Russian guy be on a Zoom call. That was it. And what now? What they're going to be tried for? What, treason? Like, come on. What, are you saying I can't talk to Russian people now? So
yeah. Let's roll on here.
Mr. Khan, come on. You're the executive editor of the New York Times, I'm just trying to get into some good trouble here, man.
That Khan should be able to stand up and rejoin chapter and verse. He should be able to leap to his feet and defend his newspaper and his reporting. None of that. He ain't doing any of that, Jose.
Right, yeah. He could have said, you hooligan, you don't know what you're talking about. You're a misinformation. This is what we're talking about. None of that.
Yeah, it's revealing, isn't it?
Listen, Karen, get out of my face for a second. I got to talk to these gentlemen.
I'm trying to block them.
Yeah, you'll see.
Okay. Well, I just want to hear what they have to say. Go ahead, I'm done.
Wait your turn.
Right here, yeah, there's that one. There's the camera.
Wait your turn.
You could project if we can't.
I would just say, I think it's important to hear everybody's point of view.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
All right.
I do think that we need to give our moderator a chance to ask other questions.
We're on the verge of World War III.
Yeah, what an excellent point. That they want to defer to the status quo. They want everybody to write their questions, and I'm not. That's what they do, right? You got to put your questions down
Exactly.
on a note. Yeah,
Exactly. You write it down, and then they decide who to answer and what not to answer.
and shit, the world's ending, folks. I mean, we're on the precipice. I mean, it's happening,
Exactly.
particularly with climate. Matter of fact, these climate people will tell you that it's too late right now. We're going to see, and your children and grandchildren are going to see harm like you can't envision right now, and that's having done nothing to this point. So
Let's go. Let's go. Say something about this bombing. We blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. Listen, don't stand there while there are people rotting in prison. Nobody said anything about Uhuru, right? The socialists who are in jail for being critical of this war. God damn it.
Yeah, I get tackled.
this is what a room full of journalists do when a guy's exercising First Amendment rights. Yeah.
That was
my God,
the
it
Dean of Columbia who tackled me down.
Oh my God. Yeah, the most respected and revered journalism school in America.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
jaw-dropping. Well, before we move off of this, talk a little bit about why Nord Stream. And I've talked about this so much, but why it's such a Rosetta Stone, Jose?
Because it has the ability to shape geopolitics for the next century. I mean, really, like if we can actually get accountability and we can get, the proof that the United States, we already have the proof. Seymour Hersh like basically laid it out. But if it comes to light and, the world recognizes that the United States blew this up, you're talking about dismantling of NATO right off the bat. NATO will just be dissolved. It has to be, right? It will lose all credibility. Also, you can't take people seriously when it comes to this administration about climate change because they committed the worst climate catastrophe ever in human history by blowing this up, right? So they want to talk about how green they are. How green was it, okay, to leak all this gas out into the ocean and into the atmosphere? That doesn't sound so green to me. So nobody can take them seriously on anything anymore. And the next 100 years will forever be changed because of this.
Sea change. The Beatles, folks. I mean, somebody said it's more like Elvis. I mean, I'm seeing this change, and this Nord Stream situation, as Jose says, the greatest climate sabotage in history with a methane, as it's called, that was released into the atmosphere. There's also a lot of people that say this is an act of war. If you want to look at it from a military perspective, what we did surreptitiously in secret with these gaslighting mass media channels and newspapers protecting our military could have also created this situation for Armageddon. Okay, well, I looked at the clock. We're out of time almost. Here's what I talked about how this changes everything. I want you, and I've heard you interviewed before, Jose, talk about words, the power of words and the power of speech and the impact and the change that can cause. And maybe that'll be the closing remarks here. Tell us about that.
You have to understand that everything you do has motion, right? When you wave your hand like this, even though you're doing an impression on the air, you're also pushing every particle. And eventually those particles are going to go around the world. They're going to touch each other one way or another. And it does that infinitely forever, right? And in that motion, right, you leave an imprint there forever that will exist long after you're dead. Your words are also an impression upon the air. So the words you say will forever resonate around the world. What is it you want to leave this planet? What words do you want to leave on this planet that will forever resonate with the world long after you're dead? Because we're only here for a tiny sliver of time, but it will ring out in eternity forever. So go get heard and leave something worth hearing.
Yeah, that's great. And I got to bring this up on a show. I promised my wife.
Oh, you muted. I can't hear you anymore. I can't hear you. We can't hear you. George, we can't hear you. We can't hear you. You hit your mic and something happened. We can't hear you. Your microphone. Yeah, you lost the cable. Oh, no. All right. Well, hi, everyone. I guess I'll be co-hosting here for George while he fixes his microphone. And So I hope everybody enjoyed the show. He was actually about to plug a book there called The Way of Could you hold up that book again so I can read the title? It was a book here called The Hidden Messages in Water, which she was telling me kind of talks about how if you speak spoken words, that it actually takes the shape of water. The spoken words take the shape of the water, and people should check out that book. So, yeah, is it time to close the show out, George? I don't know what you're saying, man. I can't hear you. You like knocked your mic, and then all of a sudden you got muted. You're gonna play the outro? Is that what you just said? Okay, I read it. Okay, well, everyone, thank you for joining us again here on Podcast by George. I'm Jose Vega, and your host was George. So thank you for listening.
The state's in a mess. If you're on the fence, don't sing the blues, 'cause here's the man with the news.
Hi, how are you? Welcome on in.
Podcast by George.
Another podcast by George.
Podcast by